So we got a surprise drop for the Halo Infinite beta, and the beta is going to run alongside Season 1. And in this video, we're going to be going over what are the best settings you should be using for your controller for Halo Infinite. If you enjoy weapon comparison guides or overall tips and tricks for any of the first-person shooters you're enjoying at the moment, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel as we try to reach our goal of 10,000 subscribers. And click that link in the description down below and subscribe to our second channel. We do post tons of extra content over there as well. Let's get on into the actual settings themselves, and we're going to go through the controller settings, the video settings, and the audio settings. We'll skip over mouse and keyboard because I don't really play with mouse and keyboard, even though I do play on PC. So for button layout, I have this set to default. The reason why is because on the back of my controller, I do have paddles, which does help out when I'm trying to jump or slide. Now, if you do want to change your slide button to the analog stick, then button puncher is going to be the best for you. Then for thumbstick layout, leave that to default. Vibration, you want that off because it's going to throw off your aim. Invert look, you want that off. Invert flight as well, you want that off because I don't like inverting even when I'm on vehicles. It's going to be really annoying. Hold to crouch, you want that off. Some people do like that as a toggle, so personal preference there in my opinion. Hold to zoom, again, some people do like that, especially in Halo as toggle. Personally, I just like to hold to zoom. Hold to sprint, you want that off. You don't want to be mashing in your analog stick just to sprint around. Movement assisted steering, you don't want that on either. Maintain sprint, you want that on, just so you can continue sprinting. Auto clamber is going to basically be a mantle. Now, inside Halo is not that big of a deal, to be completely honest, so I would just leave that turned on. It doesn't really get in the way, and plus you do jump around a lot inside Halo, let's be completely honest. And then step jump, I've got that on as well. Now, look acceleration, I've turned this up to 3. At default, I think it's either set to 2 or 1. But I do think you need to have this a little bit higher. When it comes to look sensitivity, I have this set to 6 and 6 as well, so I would leave that there too. It just allows you to look around a lot quicker when you're not aimed down sights. Now, when it comes to zoom level, for a 1.4x, a 2.5x, and a 3x, I would set it to 0.7 or even 0.8. I think that's really handy to get a slightly slower aim down sight, especially on controller when you will be competing against some keyboard and mouse players. For those 3 zoom levels, so that's the lower zooms, I would recommend having either 0.7 or 0.8, and that's just going to make it a little bit slower when you're moving around, when you're aiming down sights, to allow you to be more accurate, land more shots, that kind of thing. For the higher zoom levels, which are most likely going to be snipers, you want to be able to swipe across your screen quite quickly for those, so I'd leave them at 1, which is the default. I've changed my dead zone settings, but again, that's going to be personal preference here, so I would not really recommend changing much of this unless you know exactly what you're doing. Then when it comes to on foot, you can change some of these buttons here to change what buttons are mapped to what, which I'm glad they've put in this game. But to be completely honest, the button maps in this game are already really good, so I haven't really changed anything other than, like I said, if you really need to crouch or slide with different buttons. Now, when it comes to video settings, which is going to be your graphics settings here, you want to go for field of view. I've got this maxed all the way up because I'm just used to playing with a larger field of view on PC now, so I've got that to 120 FOV. You want to make sure your display adapter and your display monitor is correct. Full screen borderless is checked, otherwise if I don't check it, it's going to be a small window for some reason, so you definitely want to make sure it's full screen borderless. This game isn't like super intensive on your PC anyway, which is actually quite handy because you can pretty much get 120 FPS regardless of what kind of hardware it is you're running. But VSync I have turned on just to make sure that I am getting 120 FPS. You don't necessarily need to have this on, it's not going to help all that much, to be completely honest. Limit and active frame rate I have set to off, is when you're tabbing out of the game and doing other stuff, it will slow down the frame rate. I'm not really too fussed about what that does, to be completely honest. Quality preset, I have this set to custom, and I'll show you all my custom settings. Anti-aliasing, I have set to high, and the reason for that is because it makes the edges less jaggy, so you definitely want anti-aliasing turned up as you can. I've not really set anything to ultra because I don't really feel like it's needed, to be honest, in this game. Texture filtering is medium, ambient occlusion is medium as well. Texture quality is high just to make sure the game looks nice. Geometric or geometry quality is high as well, that's going to be the actual polygon shape. Reflections I've set to low, I don't really care. Depth of field you want low as possible. If there was an option to turn this off, I would turn it off, but you want it as low as possible. Shadow quality is low as well. You just need to know if there is shadows there. You don't really need to know how detailed those shadows are. Lighting quality again set to low. Fog quality I've set turned off. If anything's going to blur your screen or make it hard to see, I'd turn it all the way down. Cloud quality again set to low. Dynamic wind is off. Ground cover quality I've set to high. This is basically the quality of the objects you can take cover behind, more or less. You can turn this down to medium, to be perfectly honest. It doesn't really make too much of a difference. Effects quality, again, I've got this set to low. Decal quality, again, this is going to be like bullet holes and stuff like that. I would highly recommend leaving as high or medium, and that's so you can see if enemies have been nearby, because you'll see the bullet holes or any footprints or anything like that that's been left behind. Animation quality I have set to auto. Honestly, I'm not really too sure exactly what this setting does. Once I do figure it out, I will leave a pinned comment down below. Terrain quality, simulation quality, flocking quality are all set to medium. This is all to do with the surrounding world. You don't really need this to be super high, unless it's to do with other enemy players or yourself. I don't recommend putting any of these settings to high. This is just going to be about like birds and stuff that are flying by in the game, which is not too important. Async compute, I have this turned off. Blur, I have this turned all the way down. You do not need any motion blur or radial blur or any kind of blur. Screen shake turned all the way down as well. It's just going to take away from your gunfights. Exposure, once again, all the way down is going to take away from your gunfights. Now, full screen effects, I have this set to 65%. It's going to show whether you have armor, whether your shields are recharging, all that kind of stuff. Don't turn this off. Make sure it's like 50 to maybe 80%. I wouldn't have it at 100% because sometimes it can distract you a little bit. Speed lines I have turned on just to know when I am sprinting, and it just allows me to know that. If you know the game really well and you don't really need this, then you can turn this off. Sharpening, you do need it about 50 or above, because if you have it turned all the way down, which I have tried out by the way, the game looks terrible, so just make sure you have this set to 50. When it comes to audio here, the main audio I have set to 10, which is full. Voice audio I have set to 10, which is very handy, especially during games. You need to know what's going on in this game specifically. There's a lot of voice overs that are going on in this game. Music I have turned down all the way down, so I don't necessarily need it, especially in game. It can be quite distracting. Sound effects I have turned up to 10. Environmental effects I have turned down to 5. This is going to be like wildlife or anything that's inside the game that's not important. So I do have it on so you can hear it, but I have it turned down compared to some of the more important sounds like sound effects as well as hit detection effects. I had that set to 10 as well. Inactive mute, again, this is going to be when you're tabbing out of the game. I really don't care that much about the audio playing in the background. Dynamic range, I have this set to standard, and then subtitles is going to be personal preference here. When it comes to HUD and UI and all that kind of thing, I do have this usually set to default, which it is. So I do have the HUD visible, of course. HUD opacity 0.5. Tips and tutorials are on, so it reminds me to reload when I forget to. Text chat display name is set to default as well. Horizontal and vertical display margin, I do want to play around with this because I don't know if you up it if it comes closer, which is what I do like, but if you leave it to 0 it's further out, or it's the other way around, so I need to work that one out. And again, I'll leave that in the pinned comment as well. Multiplayer scoreboard control, I have that set to tap. FPS counter I have on. Network statistics, I have that set to on as well because it is handy to know when you're in game. All the colors you can change here for friendly color, fireteam color, and the enemy color. I have this set to default, it's just easy to understand anyway. Show enemy names I have on, and show all the names, just so you know if a certain player is killing you over and over again. Then when it comes to UI visual effects, now this only affects your HUD. So you're not going to not get parallax if you turn this off. You'll still get parallax on your gun, you'll still get bloom on your gun, and you'll still get chromatic abrasion in the game, but it won't affect the HUD, and it just means that there's less movement going on that you can get distracted by. When it's starting camera type, I have this set to first person. Starting cameras 1. Starting perspective is broadcast. Stat board is on. This is all the default settings, to be honest. I don't really want to play around with this too much because I don't really think it matters that much anyway. And all the accessibility changes is going to be personal preference, but they're kind of duplicated from previous settings as well, so they might already be adjusted after you went through these. But there you have the best settings for Halo Infinite, the beta and the full game, obviously, as this progresses. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more Halo content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel as we're trying to reach our goal of 10,000 subscribers, and click that link in the description down below and subscribe to our second channel, and thank you very much for watching.